Well, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Welcome. Back to get my all right, today we're just shoring up some things. A lot of discussion, question and answer period. Not a lot of new information, but I want to make sure that we're clarifying some of the questions that you have as we finish out the year. And so we have some topics to discuss. I will tell you that today, just so that you are aware, we will be filming this. Just be aware of that. We did not yesterday, and I did answer some questions yesterday in a way that I wouldn't answer today because we were filming. So, anyways, welcome. Tell me, how are things going out there in PCTS land?
Good? It's going, yeah.
Oh, like that?
I bonded with my intern, so we're both good.
Good. All right. Think about for a moment, where is your candidate in the pursuit of their credential? So think about that for a moment. Where are they in the pursuit of their credential? Let's talk about your interns. How many of you have interns that are dying on the vine? Dying. Okay. And is our program adding to their stress level, not adding to it, or mitigating some of the stress?
I think it's great because being in the events last year and all the work that they had to do, I'm glad that you streamlined it for us so they have less to do so that we can be there as a support to make sure that they're track their testing and their credential stuff and be a support in the classroom. I think it's great that you did it that way. You structured it differently than the big program.
It is different.
So I think it, for at least for my person I work with, I think it's doable. We work together. She has to, her notes and everything. So we're working, through the questions, and it gives us a point of reference to start it. I think it's, I like it.
Okay, so our interns in particular, they're working full time, they're going to school full time, they're meeting with 2 mentors as their credential stipulates. How many of them are coaching something on top of that? Interns now, just the interns. Your intern is coaching on top of.
And he just started, and so we would always meet after school on Monday, so now it's, okay, well, I can't do it then, and I can't, so now we're kind of trying to figure out when and where, so.
And I was talking with one of the PE teachers yesterday, and what he said was, there's kind of an expectation that if we hire you as a PE coach, especially at junior high school level, you're going to be coaching a sport.
Absolutely.
I think though, if I had the power, I would say no pre-credential teacher should be allowed to coach on top of teaching. And our interns, because he's going to coach and go to school and finish his TPAs, pass the RICA, and come to work every day and do a great job for us. I don't think that's possible. Honestly. I'm just saying from a perspective of a human being to looking at 100 to 120 hour week now, something's going to get cut. What do you think? What's your opinion? What do you think is going to get cut? In this kid's life, what's going to get cut?
My intern has a greatly reduced social life.
A greatly reduced social life.
Okay.
But I'm guessing though that a kid that's interning and teaching full time and now coaching, which is almost a full-time job in and of itself, is probably with not giving his students everything that he was giving.
But
There has to
typically,
be a give somewhere.
I know at the high school, usually you get hired as the coach first.
Well,
You get the coach, then you get the teaching position.
when I have the conversation with HR
I mean, that's what we're having.
and with Johnny and with Assistant Sue, when we talk about our program this summer, I'm going to say, and I'm going to get Carlos Beckett to back me up, we cannot allow pre-credential teachers to be coaches too. The learning curve of this job is enormous.
Right.
And we're asking a pig to come in with no experience and no training and nothing except for enthusiasm, and we're gonna give them a 40-hour-a-week job plus coach.
You're gonna burn them out.
And I get being young and wanting some money. And there's a nice stipend that goes with it. Or the concept of, if I don't coach, I don't work. If you don't do it in the classroom first, you don't work. That's the bottom line. So I'm hearing that interns especially are feeling the pinch. My sped interns are feeling the pinch because the job is enormous and they're going to school and doing all of the things. And my PE guys that are interns are feeling the pinch because they're coaching my high school guy 2 sports, one in the fall, one in the spring.
Mine is to sped, coach, lab, everything. We can't do that.
Can't.
And what I'm afraid of is he's laying a foundation that's gonna crumble. If not this year, it really isn't.
And just so you know, Kent has told me personally that we hire sped teachers. We don't expect them to go sped 1 year and then gen ed next year in our district. Kent's conversation with that person is, we hired you as a sped and we expect you to stay there. And the person says, well, I want a gen ed job, and Kent has said, thank you for your services. You're welcome to go look elsewhere.
Even if they have a general ed credential.
Now, that may be a different situation, but I'm talking about new teachers that are still earning their credential, whom we just hired to be a sped teacher.
I have that situation.
And we had one at South last year that wanted to, and was promised things, and they're no longer with us. So this is reality. Sped teachers, speaking of your situation, my understanding is that Kent is, among all the people I know, he's one of the most consistent people I've ever met. He says one thing for one person, he applies it to everybody. And so I can count on him keeping his word. And so when I go and tell people this is the district's policy, you're hired as a sped, you're expected to stay as a sped. A 15-year veteran is a different situation.
We had somebody who was just finishing his credentials last year, so as an intern, and he was looking at going into general ed, because he finished the general ed part, but he couldn't clear his credential because he hadn't finished the sped part, and the principal was pushing for him to go to general ed, so didn't end up happening, but.
So he did not get a gen ed job?
No, he didn't end up doing it, but
He's still
administrator
hoping.
was willing to hire him as a GE.
And there might be, with this teacher shortages, some exceptions out there, but by and large, the need for sped is 10 times greater than the need for gen ed. And if they're hired that way, they're kind of buttoned. All right, PIPs and STIPs. In looking at the plan and thinking about their credentialing process, in fact, we have some paperwork I'd like you to fill out tonight. Think about this for a moment. Have they been a PIP or a STIP for 2 years now? Or is this their first year? Think about your candidate. They're a PIP or STIP, not an intern, that's a different category. PIP or STIP. Is this their first year or second year? Anyone have second year PIPs or STIPs? All right, so is your candidate making a progress to be an intern next year?
Yes,
And will they make it?
yes.
Any barriers in the way?
She just has a RECA to pass.
RECA will prevent her from getting in a credentialing program. That can be done while she's
All the CSEP.
fantastic. She's good to go.
I have one also second year, he has not taken the lead yet, he just took the CSET and did not pass.
CSET is a barrier, RECA is not. RECA they can do while they're in the credentialing program. What's CSET? Multiple subject?
Yeah,
Okay.
and the other one didn't even take anything, because she's not gonna use it.
Gave up, okay. Second year PIPs good?
She's taking the CSET one on Monday.
She's just started.
She's gonna start she's at National for 1 month. She's taking those 1 month courses, and she hopes to be established for state teachership by August.
Okay, so those with PIPs and STIPs, let me remind you what the credential says, and then help you know what you need to do. If you're a PIP, a pre-intern permit, or a STIP, a short-term staff permit, you can be one of those for 1 year, and you can be the other thing for 1 year. Okay? You can be a PIP for a year and a STIP for a year. For your life. Okay? So once somebody is issued a PIP or a STIP, that's a district-generated credential, The district owns that person. They cannot leave the district and go work somewhere else in the middle of the year with that credential. They're stuck, okay? PIP for a year, STIP for the year. The CTC says this is a lifetime waiver, so to speak. They have no waiver period. They have no, we're going to give you 6 more days. They have 1 year, they're done. Okay? So, they've got to convert to an internship. To become an intern, each of these universities have a little bit different requirements. So I want you to have a discussion with your PIPs and STIPs about their university of choice and what does it take to become an intern. I think by and large, all of the universities have said you must show subject matter competency prior to an internship credential. Subject matter competency comes via the CSETs. Okay? That applies to both the single subject and multiple subject teachers. This is a barrier because our peeps out there are struggling with the CSETs.
My intern does not have to take the CSET because she said because of how many units she had, it got waived through her program.
That does happen occasionally. That used to be the way it was all the time, and that's become less and less and less.
Mike had a question because of the CSET. He took the multiple subject one and didn't pass one portion of it, but his bachelor's degree is in history. He's going into SPED. Does he have to take the single subject history, or does he take the multiple subject? Because that's where
What's he teaching?
he's teaching history.
At the high school, at the junior high level. Yes, he can become a single subject SPED teacher if that's his choice.
But otherwise, it's fine just to take the multiple subject?
In the SPED field, you can play with both.
Okay.
However, once we get into the above 9th grade and we start talking about the sciences and the math classes, they have to be single subject SPED. And there are numerous SPED teachers that started off with English and then went to some classes or took a test and have earned a supplemental in other single subjects in which they're teaching. It's complicated. We have some high school SPED teachers that teach it all, and they have multiple. What's that thing they have to go to, like Modesto or yeah, there you go.
That's it.
That helps those single subjects become. But there also was more pressure under an old child left behind to make sure that everything lined up, and there's a little more, not a lot, but a little more wiggle. And he's convinced he's going to stay at middle school, high school.
I think so. I don't think he wants elementary.
He has a job, so I would suggest that would be fine.
And the other guy, he's going to be the counselor, but he said he's gonna stay another year, but he doesn't have any plans to enroll in a credential program or take any of the tests.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting. That one I want to talk to Kent about. Personally, I will talk to him. I don't like that idea. One or the other. You don't use this as a means to an end.
So just let you know too, the RECA, it's hard, a hard test to take, and it can be failed multiple times. So we found out through another teacher who had previously taken it 5 times, didn't pass, 5. She petitioned, because she got close to passing, she petitioned them and had them reassess her score, and then they passed her.
Oh, nice.
So that just so that you know if your people are not passing, that is an option. Like if they're within a few points, maybe 10 or whatever, you can petition claiming financial hardship because it's expensive. They have to pay for it every time, and this particular person had gone to study classes and everything. It's not easy to pass.
No, it isn't.
So just know that you have the option to petition if they're close.
Particularly for really 4th grade and up. If you're a 4th grade and up teacher, you're not being exposed to those reading things that you do in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd.
Even the ones that aren't 4th grade teachers, it's not easy.
Exactly.
So
Now, I understand that there's also a video you can do as a portion of the test, so that's another option.
there's things out there.
Let's talk about the CSETs though for a moment. They tend to be barriers. What are some thoughts that you have on assisting our pre-credentialed teachers in passing these CSETs? Any thoughts? I have some, and I'm going to run them by the DO. What are your thoughts? let me say it this way. I took the social studies CSET, all three tests one time and passed. I went in there thinking, what would a progressive liberal answer on these questions? And I tried to change my answers to fit that because I figured that's who was reading them. Right?
Right.
And so whether I believed in that philosophy or not was irrelevant. I wanted to answer questions in a way that made sense. When I took the English CSET, there were 4 subsets. I passed 1 and 2 the first time. I took all 4 at once. I passed the 3rd one the second time and the 4th one the 3rd time. And there's things in there, like buzzwords for lack of a better word, that they're looking for, and I don't know how deeply they read it, but I got lucky, and Duncan will appreciate this. Part of that test had to do with Shakespeare, and I don't get along with Shakespeare, but for whatever reason, I just happened to watch Midsummer Night's Dream the day before, and that was what was on the test. So I was able to answer some questions about that. And I think they wanted to know about setting. Would you put it in would it be all modernized, or would you put it in a forest? Oh yeah! And so I got it. I also took the administrative test, and it was an all-day sit-down, write an essay, and I passed that the first time. So I think I have test-taking skills. I will tell you the English test is tough. There's just things in there that not everyone is thinking about. And they ask you how to teach drama, and how to teach speech, and how to all these kind of things that, I love reading books and breaking down. That has nothing to do with drama. But as an English teacher, you're expected to cover that.
Did you, just out of curiosity, did you study for the English test, and did you take a methods class on it before you took that test?
I did not. I studied by downloading, because I didn't know about the books that we have here now. I took the pre-test, and I looked at my scores, and they have all kinds of resources online, and I kept reading and rereading all of that, and kept taking the practice test online, and that was my prep. I didn't do anything for the social studies. I did read about the administrator's test, and that was all about using common stakeholders and common sense approaches to problems. And I kind of realized that was the philosophy. Don't make a lone wolf decision. So every time they had a scenario, I would answer with, I would also consult or meet with or talk to, so I knew that ahead of time. There are some classes being offered at, I think at Fresno Pacific and Fresno State that help with the CSET. Have you heard that?
I heard that.
I took it, a long time ago, but I took one, it was, 1 unit class, and I think we met maybe 3 Saturdays, so we went by subject, let's say math and science, 1 session, and so forth.
For the multiple subject, okay. So, do you remember, how long ago was that?
Oh my, I'm thinking maybe 10.
You're that old?
Yeah.
Do you remember how much it cost?
You know what, that was, if you pay for full time, I always took extra units, so the same amount for a full time, I just added that unit. So I'm not sure, individually, I don't know.
Okay.
There's books.
We have books, and we have them, and we loaned them
There's things you can do online.
online.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be helpful if, and that, the hard part is because there's so many subjects out there, how do you meet the needs? But if as a district, we paid some of you to be experts in your field and had a Saturday in which you gave a crash course for people trying to pass your subject area? What do you think of that idea?
It's probably just gonna be the main one, like math or English. It seems like those seems to be, it sounds like a lot of math people,
Science
math.
splitters off into so many areas, it's hard to get a group. Math, English, and multiple subject? Or does that cover math and English, cover both?
I heard that multiple subject, it seems like mainly math, it's the math that stops from passing.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I don't know about this.
So, you need to gather data. What would be helpful if you could gather data from the people we are helping to see who has attempted a CSET who has failed the CSEP, because then that would tell you where you need to assist them.
I agree, that's part of my data collection tonight. All right, let's move on. How are the journals working? I've heard some comments, mostly good, but not all of them. But so tell me, how are the journals working for you and your candidates?
I'd like to give us talking points.
Yes.
Okay, so that you like the reflective question side of things.
Okay, they remind me of, oh yeah, that would be a very good thing to talk about at this point.
Okay. I had a suggestion come to me recently that said, as part of your mentor log, you fill out the journal for your candidate. And the candidate just has to show up to mentoring meetings, sign off, and go on. Now, different than Mick, because that's a whole nother issue. You're almost there right now with your
You
content
already
logs.
kind of journaling it though on
Right?
your, yeah.
But then they
So why
would,
would you have to do,
It would just be a little more in depth,
have really nothing to do.
except show up and sign.
And then, I don't know how checked in they would be to the conversation always, if they didn't have to then later put down their own thoughts and notes. If you're teaching a class and you never had the student do anything, they would check out at some point.
One of the problems I have right now is I don't have a leverage for students that are not doing the journals. Whereas in the induction program, I could say, you want your credential or not? Because I am the one that holds it in my hand. If you don't do it my way, I'm gonna do something else. And I've never had anybody, they grumble, but they've always complied because they want that credential. But in this situation, there really isn't a lot. There's some. I could go and threaten them and say it's a condition of work, it's a condition of your credential. But we're not gonna fire anybody because they're not doing it.
Our signature just goes on the we have to check.
That's another thought that came back, was maybe they write the journal, but instead of submitting it to us, you see it.
And we'll just submit it with the mentor log. Send ours over.
Well, you would just check off, yes, I've read the journal. Because really, once it gets to us, there's not an interaction between us and the candidate to give them any kind of real feedback or whatever. That's just,
From what you're reading, is there a lot of confidentiality involved, or, so, there you
Are
go.
people not turning them in?
that's part of the problem.
What if considering it more on a case-by-case basis, where you're looking at, well, who is really being effective in the classroom already, and give them a little leniency versus those who need to really reflect and work on what they're actually trying to accomplish?
That would be almost impossible.
Okay.
Part of it is an equity issue with the union. Part of it is trying to figure that out. We wouldn't really know that until January or February, until we've seen them do their thing. And there's a lot, there's 94 in the program. It would be hard for one person or two people to sit down and decide, you know what I mean? Case by case. I don't get to know our teachers case by case.
Are you talking about picks and steps, or are you talking about interns when you say a lot of them aren't doing their journals?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know the answer.
Because if the answer is picks and steps, then in my mind, I'm gonna say, well, you know, now you're a MIC. You've done your pick year, you've done your skip year, you've done your intern or whatever. Now you're a MIC, and normally, you know, you could go through this program in 1 year. However, since you didn't do the journals for this last couple of
Lack the
years,
evidence.
now you need to go ahead and do 2 more years of this program. And I think that's the leverage that you have
I think
to
you're right.
hold over their heads. And I
You're
don't think
absolutely right.
they know that. I don't think they know that this time these journals can be translated into a year off later. And I think that's knowledge that we need to give them
You're right
if
about
we
that.
want them to
That's
turn in
the
journals.
perfect answer. But the question I have.
And drop the mic.
Thank you, Governor.
Dive in to catch a football.
The tension though that I'm feeling is this. I feel it's healthy to have a moment to reflect. And from the people that I'm talking to, it sounds like writing the journal for the pick side of things is about a 20-minute exercise. out of a whole month, I'm asking somebody to sit down for 20 minutes and think, what did we talk about and how am I affecting my class? I don't know that I'm asking for a ton.
Which, and I've suggested for mine to do it as we're meeting.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
Just
I like
write
that.
down some
But
things.
the problem is that I can't make them do it. It's, I can suggest
Okay,
all
well, now,
I
can we now
want,
put
but
this
yeah.
caveat
We
in?
will talk about that, cause I'm gonna talk about ECO tonight, so we'll bring that up again and
You also let us
explain what it all means. And
know if they're not
Yeah,
doing
can we know that? 'Cause if we know who they are, then I can say, shame.
let me do that. Let me go back and look at it.
How dare.
And I make mine share her document with me before she turns it in.
And that's helpful.
And that's me. I share it with me. I want to look at it just because I'm nosy like that.
Are any of your candidates complaining, oh my gosh, this thing is so, and I've got so much to do?
No.
And we like it the way it is. One of the, okay, all right. How are you feeling about the mentor logs? Are they working for you? Or is there
There was one that actually isn't filled out.
That's the problem when I have people say, will you share this with me? And I have to consistently click edit only, and they say, no, I need to edit it. Well, click file, make a copy, and I must have shared it with somebody without clicking view only. And so then, and I didn't mean to share that one, that's the first mistake. The second mistake is, I created a document for February, but sent you December's. So I made 2 mistakes. Y'all got the right one?
That's all I do. I just copy the one from my last
That's
one.
me.
Yeah.
structure?
No, a little bit, a couple months ago,
Yeah,
but.
you
I
just,
saw
that's total
that.
hours, that's how you
Yeah.
change the total hours.
That's right, the hours weren't on there.
But I have,
Change
honestly,
the
people every month saying, I need my mentor log, where's my mentor log? So I do the one I do for all, but I made 2 mistakes in my rush to get things done. Making a mistake causes like 10 times more work. It's better to slow down and do it right the first time. All right, let's talk about the end of the year. And before we do that, you have a white paper which I've asked you to fill out to the best of your knowledge. If you don't know, that's okay. But I want you to take a look at that and fill it out. Now, if you have more than one candidate, you need more than one paper. So, anyone need more than one?
I don't have to be Brian because he's no longer here anymore, right?
Yeah, fill it out.
Okay.
You know that he's
I know what he's got.
hip, and then you know that he's.
You're nothing, you're ahead, right?
You're nothing.
Yeah, I just got him out here.
He's got his degree in music.
Music? He's teaching math.
Cause he passes his guy.
You must be teaching freshmen?
No, he got all the fundamentals of math.
Or even below freshmen.
Yeah, he's got the seniors, you just need to
He
graduate.
has a supplemental math,
Yeah.
not a full math credit, I guess.
He didn't have anything, he's still doing it.
But you said CSET.
He did the same.
That's a supplemental bare bones,
Oh, wow.
because if you look at the math CSET, you gotta be math major to pass that stuff.
Yes.
It's complicated, upper, whatever. Unless this guy's a genius, he's gonna be stuck in his exact.
They have to pass the weekend to get that.
To get the, you have to pass the CSET to get your preliminary, and you can take the week while you're in the credential program.
A little better
Have
than
it when you're preliminary, like you have your preliminary, like mine's, she's grads get done, but she still has to pass her weekend.
You say you can get your preliminary, yeah. I went to that, so I'm gonna get back. I went to that, some of this happened to happen. Investigate, like, same old reading test, and I just memorized every single multiple question. And, I mean, I passed the first time I took it, it was not even close, I mean, I'm good at memory. Truthfully, 2 days later, I forgot everything, but I can memorize it all from test. Well, a lot of it had nothing to do with what I was gonna do for special ed. I really didn't care about it.
Not coming back here.
So I had put no, but.
Missed by 2 points.
Okay, so just do what I can, that's what I wanted
Let
to
me know
double check.
on your, probably not coming back.
I did put, yeah. Okay.
Alright, so let's talk about this for a moment. I'm sure you are all acutely aware that evaluation season is upon us. For our new teachers, they're all evaluated twice. If any of your teachers not received an initial evaluation in the fall, any not received an initial evaluation in the fall,
You're different.
and then we'll brand new again. Okay, so they are now faced with a spring evaluation, or they have just concluded their spring evaluation. The district wants to make sure they have all of the information they have before the end of the month. The Ed Code says they have until the 15th of March to let a teacher know they're being retained or not. Okay? So let's talk about that for a moment. What happens if they get a non-reelect? What are you going to do with that teacher? So here it is, February 20th, and you've just been told June 2nd will be their last day at Madera Unified.
But some of them get pink slips, but they're going to be retired, right?
Then they get a nod in a week, but there's no guarantee they're being retired. It used to be, I gotta ask, that's a good question. Every pre-credential teacher is a temporary teacher. They cannot be on a probationary track. So that would tell me, but we don't have to notify temporary teachers I'm not coming back. We only notify teachers if they're not coming back.
Our teachers, our new I'm only saying this because at my site, at their meeting where they gather all the newbies out, they were told that pretty much everyone gets a pink slip. And then I told my new teacher that absolutely she's coming back because she's doing well and she's science. So are they, how do they know if they're actually let go?
That's what our principal does. She gives a pink slip and says, "Oh, you're totally coming back. I have to do this. It's, you know."
So we still have pink slipping all over temporary teachers regardless of
Pink week, right?
That's the conversation that the administrator has is, we want you to come back, don't worry about it, you don't have to interview for your job. Or they say, thank you for your service, you've been doing. Their evaluation will tell the story.
How about the one guy I'm talking about who's gonna be a counselor? He's getting good reviews, he does a good job, but he says he's coming back next year, but he's still wanting to be.
I don't know.
So,
I don't know. I don't have an answer.
okay. I have him right
Where's he? Is he going to be a school counselor?
Yeah, I mean, he does a great job.
Don't you have to teach X number of years before?
No.
No.
He does a lot of kids.
Now, counselor basically is monthly scheduling and working those things out. They're not doing marriage and family counseling or child development counseling or testing. That's a psychologist. So, no. All right. So what do we do with the conversation of those that we know are not coming back because of job performance or whatever? How do we? What kind of conversation do we have with them? Help them get their profile.
I think you let them know they still need to do the best job they can because they're gonna call your administrator if you apply for a new job, so.
That is absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct. They have, and I just met with Kent today who told me that any non-reelected teacher can choose to resign and not have non-reelect in their file. He affords that to every teacher as an option to resign versus getting the non-reelect. And so what I tell the teacher is, you can control your exit or the district's gonna control it. When the district control it, it's not as fun. They're all gonna need a reference. Remind them though why they're here. Yeah, it's a paycheck, but the kids still need them to do their thing and to finish professionally. So it's a tough conversation if you're in that situation. Does that mean you? It's a tough conversation, but be prepared, if your candidate's in there. Okay, what are some things about the end of the year that you wanna talk to your teacher about, and you know they are coming back? What are some things you wanna wrap up and kind of remind them, hey, this is some things we need to think about, for next year? What is the end of the year like? Hectic?
I told mine, I asked, cause there's another science position opening up at the school, and I said, well, if you wanna stick with what you're doing, or are you gonna move down to the lower grade level at our school? I said, you need to put that in if you wanna change, and then I said, and don't tell anyone, because then you start competing when you start announcing things.
Good. But it's just a grade level 7th.
Right, she's 8th now, so it'd be 7th next year, but she wants to stay. But that was my advice.
Good. Keep your cards close to your vest.
Yeah.
You know what I talk to new teachers about always, I say, okay, what can you do better at the start of the year for next year? What can you start
Right.
planning for, especially in special ed, getting files ready that you know you're gonna have again for next year, and, you know, so you're saving time for next year, getting going and over the summer and all that.
Good. Good. How about, every one of them are a credentialing issue. So if they're a PIP or a STIP, I said, you're going to be there 1 year. We've got to get you to be an intern next fall. Can you start talking about what are you doing this summer? And we had this conversation last night, and one of them said, well, my candidate's getting married, she's planning a wedding. Like, oh boy. Opportunity to take a summer class, it's opportunity to, y'all know, if you don't, March 1st, I believe, is the deadline for applying for financial aid, especially for federal side of things, Pell Grants, all that kind of stuff. Help your candidate do that. What classes do they need to take this summer, or tests can they take this summer, so start planning ahead for that. I like the idea of preparing, what files do I need, what do I want to do differently when I come back to class next fall. How about this one? I have, in my experience as a teacher, found April and May to be the 2 toughest months of the year. Because my kids want to quit because they're done with state testing and spring break is over. And I want to quit. Y'all ever feel that way?
Somebody announced at the meeting, we have so and so many days left. People are already doing countdowns.
It's like 85, isn't it, or something like that, or 90?
I don't keep track.
I count my Saturdays.
It's in the
We have
70s.
16
Yeah, we're in the
Saturdays.
We're in the 70s.
Last Monday
Does that
was
sound
100
nice?
schools, so yeah.
Yeah.
Kindergarten teachers know that
Yeah.
stuff.
Kindergarten teacher,
Work days.
Hey, you all feel it. You know your teacher, coaching, interning. Oh my goodness. They're gonna get to June, you know, it's gonna be, when the sport ends, I think the adrenaline ends even. How do we keep our teachers going those last 6 weeks, particularly after spring break? How do you keep yourself going?
Say how do we do it?
We have English as testing, so it's all about that.
Okay, so testing is in early April, right?
May.
Well, you have,
It's like
We have
May
May.
early.
the state test is in May this year.
Yeah, well, as long as it doesn't conflict with AP. So it goes back to back now, yeah.
That's a little different, yes?
3 straight weeks of testing
In May.
well, late April, early May.
So yeah, at my site, it's 3 weeks of blocked out for testing, and then basically it's like a week and a half left. And then it's the last week where not much happens other than the wrap-up stuff. So really, they just have to survive.
To the state test. So that's a motivation there. We still have testing to do. Y'all know that unofficially, not officially, unofficially, your test scores kind of weigh into your evaluation. Are you aware of that?
You don't get told what your test scores are.
But the district knows. In fact, they're coming out with they just developed a algorithm that can look at your grades and look at your test scores and see how well you grade your class. So for instance, if you have a ton of A's, but all of your students are below the standard, they would say you have grade inflation going on in your class.
Yeah, the district doesn't want us to give Fs though.
Or a ton of Fs, but your kids are all passing the tests, they would say your grading system is too rigorous. And they have, I don't know, Badatunde, he's brilliant. If you're listening, Badatunde, you're, they put an algorithm together that can show the progression and grade point average and results on a test.
And how do they factor that in for special ed and SCC when they take the same test?
I understand. It is not officially part of your evaluation, but it is unofficially. And so principals are aware of these teachers consistently have these scores. And I would suggest that if it's a low score, that the administrator is probably spending more time in that teacher's classroom and trying to support that teacher. And if an administrator's around you more, then obviously there's more opportunity to be evaluated. So that's how it works. It's just a fact of life. They are not writing it on your evaluation. It is never referenced as your teacher performance compared to your test scores, but it is informally part of your evaluation. It's just the way it is.
I went over with my school, 8th grade is piloting the science test, and it happened my intern happens to be in the science department, so I was advising her about how that test works. And then she actually took my conversation and went back to her team and like, wow, we really need to do this and this and this because
Nice.
they have no idea what the test is about. You know, it's a computer that grades the multiple choice and short answer. Kids paraphrase everything out and it's looking for key details from the text. So the kids have to be kind of trained and taught that they need to pull actual quotes from these texts and put them into their response. And they had no idea that that was how that works.
It's nice though that it'll also augment your English test because it's a similar. Yay. Good. All right. If they haven't received their spring evaluation, and this is the big one that really is going to determine whether they come back, do you think it's ethical or right or part of your job to help them prepare, including even helping them write their lesson plan for their observation?
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Please ask them. Hopefully they don't say, I've got it, I don't need any help. And I tell one story of my wife was helping her preschool teacher last year get ready for her eval, and she wanted to add this and do this and have all these fun and complicated things, and Rihanna has all, oh heck no! Do what you normally do. Go over something you already know. And let it be as a normal class day as possible. So your new teachers might get all excited and they want to pull out all the tricks and don't let them do that. Let them be a normal day.
For my two people I'm working with, I don't work with them on their lesson plans. I might give them pointers on what to work on, like classroom management, things like that. But I refer them to the academic coaches because they know what
In
is
your case, that
expected
makes a
of them,
lot
what
of
they want.
sense, of course. A lot of sense. So, totally appropriate.
Mine had seen something, a group thing in another class in her co-lab. She's like, I'm gonna do this on my evaluation, they're gonna come, and I was like, have you tried it with your kids? And she's like, no, and I was like, how about you try it first? How about you try it, let them do it so that when they come in, it runs smoothly. If it's horrible, you can throw it out because in the middle of the evaluation, you don't necessarily have that leeway. And she was like, well, but the kids will know what I'm doing if I do it. You always do it before. And we talked about it and I tried to talk her into it because she was really like, no, but it'll be spontaneous and it'll be, you don't want spontaneous during the evaluation with SPED high school kids. No. So it took 30, 45 minutes and I got her to agree to try it for 15 minutes. It's a 30-minute activity, but just try 15 minutes of it beforehand. And she was like, oh my God, that is so, I need to do this and I need to do this and I got a big long, can you talk? Because we got to talk. But it was that same thing. I'm going to try this because it looked cool. Yeah, no.
Reminds me of the story of the guy says, tomorrow my administrator's going to come in and evaluate us. So when I ask you a question and you know the answer, raise your right hand. And if you don't know the answer, raise your left hand. So Tootie brought up the idea of if our PICs are not doing their journals, there is a carrot out there dangling for our new teachers. And really it would be for most of our interns. I don't think our PIPs and STIPs are allowed to student teach in their classroom without being an intern. Did anyone have that case where they're a PIP or a STIP and student teaching at the same time? So at some point they have to be, some have come to us with all of that already taken place, and all they need to do is wrap up some classes or a TPA, and then they can be preliminary teacher. So they've already done student teaching, but that means they're 2, 3, 4 years down the line. Okay? All of our pre-credentialed teachers will earn a preliminary credential. That's their goal. If they want to keep teaching, they're going to earn a preliminary. Whether they're SPED or Gen Ed. And when they do, they come to me for induction. That's what the I's for. Whether it's PISA or wherever you want to call it, it's always been an induction program. Job embedded credentialing. Okay? We call it Madera Induction and Consortium because it's a county program. We include the entire county. I just got an answer today to a long awaited question. CT, is that Thunder?
My daughter's water polo just got canceled.
Water polo got canceled? No, yeah, open that, we'll see what happens. If it starts raining, you wanna like wait it out or go home?
Go home.
Alright, so, when they come to us here's the good news. So CTC has made a decision to, and they used a very complicated word, mush the Gen Ed and Sped Ed programs into one. Okay, so now there is one set of standards for both programs, and induction is being offered for both. We have a little bit of work to do prior, and I have a due date now of April 17th. I have to submit a transition plan to CTC, and once we do that, we will be approved to have both Gen Ed and SPED induction here at Madera Unified, which is ginormous, another big fancy word. Ginormous, because we have left our SPED teachers out there to kind of figure it out on their own how they're going to get their clear credential. And so starting next year, I am 98% certain that we will have 2 programs under one roof for next year. CTC also changed the rules for SPED teachers. Up until this year, there was no early completion option for SPED teachers. They had to go through the program over a 2-year course, no exceptions. They changed that because it's now under the new standards, and now it will be available for our SPED teachers. Early completion option says we have experienced and exceptional teachers. And so that's what we looked at. But we kind of determined experience to be 2 years. That's kind of what we're looking at. We will make exceptions to that, but few and far between. We want to see some experience behind their belt. They also have to fill out an application. They have to have an interview with me, and they have to have positive evaluations of which they must share with me, and they also have to get a letter of recommendation from their site administrator. Most, but not all, that apply for early completion option get it. But we have rejected some, and we've gotten halfway through the year and said, this is too much, and backed off and said you need 2 years of support, not 1. So it's not for everybody, but what Tootie is saying to our candidates, is it lightning thunder? Yeah. What to our candidates is, we need evidence of your teacher growth, of your experience, of your participation in the program. And our evidence comes from the journals. If our candidates are not filling out their journals, there's no real way for me to say I have evidence that you're experienced and exceptional and worthy to be in an early completion option under induction. That's our leverage. Do the journals, because otherwise it will close the door and you'll have to do MIC in 2 years instead of 1. okay? So normally it's a 2-year program, but our interns, pips and stips, we could shorten it to 1 year, provided they've done the journals. Capiche? Alright.
I have a
Yes.
question. Mine was an intern, he finished in December. Is he now a MIC this semester?
Did I meet with them and talk to them? I don't think I did.
He said he told you about it.
What did he decide? There's so many.
He said, I think you were gonna move him to MIC. I
Okay.
think that's what he told me.
Let's meet. Would you schedule a meeting where we can sit down and talk about that?
Okay.
Okay, with the 3 of us.
That's fair.
Yeah, as fast as possible. And we'll make a custom program. Okay. Speaking of which, on your list are 3 questions. Number 1, are you willing to continue as a PCTS mentor? In other words, continue to do what you're doing. Okay? Second question. We love the relationships that you're building. We highly value those relationships. And if your candidate goes over to the MIC side of things, we would like to bring you along with your candidate. Okay? Because we value that. I'm going to be honest though, MIC is more rigorous and more work than our PICS program. Okay? Right now, you're helping your candidates survive. That's really our only goal. Help them be the best they can be right now. But when they come to us as an induction candidate, we're saying you now are in a credentialing program. It's equivalent to a master's program at the school site, but not as much work. And so there are a lot more to it. We ask that the induction candidates to submit evidence that they're working their plan and that they're going to professional development and they're applying it in their classroom. And if they're applying it, what is it doing for student outcome? We're asking them to submit all of this to us as evidence. And then they're making a presentation at the end of the year that talks about their teacher growth. Okay? It is more rigorous than what you're doing right now. We would love to have you make that jump with your candidate. And SPED teachers, I have to go find a whole bunch more SPED teachers to be induction mentors because the requirements didn't change on this part. I need to match credentials. So if I have a mild moderate, I have to match them with the mild moderate. I have 2 early childhood education candidates in my district. I don't know where I'm going to find early childhood master teachers for them, but I got to figure that out. So both of them are interns this year and going to be induction candidates next year. I have 1 moderate severe in the district right now, and I had a contract with County Office of Ed to get her support because I don't have any other moderate and severe credentials in the district. So we are still going to match credentials.
So the early childhood, you need somebody who has that same credential, or that same bachelor's?
Credential.
Credential.
It is
okay.
a credential.
If they're
So-
bachelor's in that, like my bachelor's is in that.
No,
That's different.
It's different.
Okay.
So in the SPED side of things, mild moderate is a credential, moderate severe is a credential, physical adaptive, help me out.
Physically impaired?
Physically impaired is a credential, early
So it's within SPED, okay.
blind, yeah,
Okay.
deaf and blind,
Visually impaired.
visually impaired. And early childhood, it's separate credentials. There's like 8 of them.
Wow.
So the early
And then there's
childhood,
authorizations to go with that, and that's a whole nother issue.
so the early childhood is not SPED, it's just early childhood.
It is early childhood SPED, both of them.
Oh, I see, I see.
One at
Preschool teacher.
Alpha and one at Sierra Vista.
Just FYI, we have a huge county SPED program at Millview. If you want to come looking for teachers, we have several classes under 2nd grade. We have an entire building with 8 classes, and they're all younger than kinder. So someone in that room should
You
have.
probably can grab them. It's much easier on our end of things. You have no idea how much work it takes to get somebody outside of our district to come, because now they're a consultant, vendor, board approved.
Because they're county?
MOU.
That's the county employee.
But if we can hire somebody in our district, it's just adding to their paycheck and that's it.
Oh.
When I hire somebody outside of my district, it's complicated.
Well, you
But
can't
don't
do
we-
early childhood from there, cause that's my wife and she's working on hers.
Don't we already contract with them because they do our speech, they do our.
It's not about that.
behavior,
Yeah, we us and no, everyone agrees to cooperate with one another, but in order to hire somebody outside of my district, I have two, right now, three. I have to have an MOU, I have to, present it to the board, it has to be board approved before I can even begin to pay. And the board's never disagreed, but there's a lot that goes on into making that happen, and it's challenging,
talking to the FBI,
challenging. Alright,
going through.
the first thing on there was PIPs, tips, and interns. Second was the MIC. The third is peer assistance and review. That's PAR. Okay, and I don't know what our needs are going to be next year, but I'm going to ask you to play with some numbers for a moment. Anyone know how many approximately round numbers, how many teachers we have in the district?
No, I thought it was closer to 1,000.
More than that.
Well,
You could, do you just
Close
want
to
just
1,000.
teachers, or you want full staff?
Teachers.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's
900, right?
More than that.
no, it's more than, is it 12? Okay.
Alright, so think back to your psychology days in college. You took one of those classes, and you had some statistics involved, and they talked about maybe a bell curve, right? And how many do you think in the district, just statistically, percentage, would be not meeting standard or getting a U, unsatisfactory? How many do you think should be there?
Your evaluation?
Percentage wise?
Based on their evaluation, now let me keep in mind that only half of them are evaluated in a given year, but okay. How many in our, out of 1,200, a percent, give me a number that you think,
20%.
20%, so we have
15 to
1,200,
20, yeah.
20% would be, what, 60? No,
No, 20% of
24.
that,
would be 240.
240.
Yeah.
That went the other way. So 20%. Alright, well, that's a lot.
That's what the math
Bell
person
curve, that
on
makes sense. 10% would be, 5% would be
60,
3%, 2.5%,
30,
1%,
Oh. 12.
Where are we at?
12.
okay, good question.
45.
A half
There you go, 6, yeah, some of us.
percent, a 1/4%. This is where we're at right now.
So you get U's?
There are 3 mandatory PARs in our district right now.
These are tenured teachers?
Yeah, that's not the question you asked though. Well, he didn't say how many are in par. He said how many
How
got
many are unsatisfactory?
unsatisfactory.
If they get an unsatisfactory, they have to be in March.
That's
Well, that's
correct.
what I was gonna quit. And once you get one U, you're part.
On your standards, you have 6 standards, 7 standards on your evaluation. The rule says that their 2 standards must be unsatisfactory. They define, this is complicated, but they define a standard as being unsatisfactory as having a majority of U's in the substandards. So most of them have 5 or 6. So if it's 5, 3 must be U's. If it's 6, 4 must be U's. Okay? You have to have 2 overall standards rated unsatisfactory. One of them has to be in the academic standards. They define as standards 1 through 5. And one could be in 6 or 7. If you look at the CSTPs, you'll understand 6 and 7 is actually one standard split into 2. Okay? So 1 through 5 has to be unsatisfactory, one of them, and one of them has to be, or you can have 2 over there. And last year only 3. Okay? I keep hearing rumblings, and I don't know what's going to actually happen. I have heard the union and the HR preach this number's way too low. Now, I do not know how our site administrators are going to react to that. But I do know this. When you're working with a teacher that should be unsatisfactory, you're doing more work than you're getting paid for. When you have the teachers on your grade level that come in And okay, everybody, you're gonna do the lesson plan, and you're gonna do the quiz, and you're gonna do the project, and we'll come together and mush it all together, and they don't bring it, because they didn't do it, that means the rest of the team has to do it, okay? Okay, everybody bring your data. Oh, I didn't bring my data, right? That happens all the time, doesn't it? Okay? All right, everybody, we have back to school night tonight, and make sure that you write and that your teacher doesn't come. And so now you're having to answer all those questions, and it makes you look bad while your next door neighbor's not there. I know that you elementary teachers get ticked when your teacher says they're supposed to be out there for recess duty and they don't show up. Or they come late to class, and so because they're late, you gotta open your door or stand outside with both classes waiting for people to come. One time you kinda understand, but after the 20th time, you're seeing red, okay? Or it's lunch duty and you don't get relieved, right? Or it's the football game and you're only supposed to sell tickets for like two halves, and the other teacher's supposed to do the other half, right? And they don't show up, or whatever the case may be, we get burnt, okay? Or they don't write lesson plans and their sub doesn't have anything, so the administrator says, what are you doing today? Can you help the substitute teacher out? Or they're out for 3 weeks and you've got to write lesson plans for both classes. Am I singing this song right?
Mm-hmm.
Who works harder when a teacher's not performing right?
Other teachers.
You do. Does that upset you?
Yeah.
Your union is hearing you. Your union is hearing you, I'm telling you. Okay? So, I, every year, think this number ought to be much higher. Actually, I think Sam's number is pretty close. Okay, maybe that's rough. But I think that's a fair number. But we're not going to get anywhere near that. But if I have this, I need help. I need more people to step up. Now, let me explain PAR, and let me be honest with you. All right? So I don't sugarcoat things and you go, you bait and switched it, man. You said it was going to be easy and it turned out to be this. All right? So let me give you the full 411, as the kids say. There are two sides to PAR. One is called voluntary and the other is called mandatory. Voluntary PAR serves two purposes. One is for any teacher that says, hey, you know what, I need some help. The curriculum changed, we got a new textbook, I don't understand the technology. Boy, I've got some sped students this year that I've never encountered before and I don't know what to do. Whatever, I changed sites, I need some help. We hook them up. And we send in a consulting teacher and they meet and they write a plan, and it's absolutely 100% confidential. I get a contact log from the mentor, and that's very, very sparse information, but otherwise nobody talks to nobody and they just do their thing. In voluntary PAR, you can start and end when you want to. We used to have a number of teachers in that category that would take advantage of some free help. And for whatever reason, the brand, the word PAR means you're in trouble, and so teachers have avoided it. And I keep having a conversation of, can we maybe call it something else, and I can never get any traction with that. A second aspect of voluntary PAR is a teacher has an evaluation that's less than what they had hoped for, but not enough to get them into real trouble. So it's maybe somewhere in the ends. And the administrator or even the union would say, it would be wise of you to go into voluntary PAR. Okay? Same thing, it's voluntary means I start and stop when I want, confidential conversation. There is some structure, we ask you to make a plan and work the plan, but the results and everything about it is confidential. That particular type of PAR pays $1,500 a year. $1,500 a year. No reports, no talking to anybody, $1,500 a year. The other side of PAR, as I mentioned, is you've gotten an unsatisfactory evaluation, and I will tell you the union is very strict on making sure that all the timelines have been met and everything has evidence-based and the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and they use the right font and they check it, okay? So you don't just get into PAR by accident. But mandatory PAR requires that there's a plan, and then there's a consultation with the administrator about that plan within the first 4 weeks of school, And then they start working the plan that includes mandatory observations from you of your teacher to a semester, them going out and observing other teachers, and conversations with the administrator and with the PAR panel. It also includes now a new step. Our PAR panel is now going out and observing those that are in mandatory PAR to kind of get more evidence of how things are going. So there's a lot going on here. I said that voluntary PAR and induction and in PICS, by and large, is confidential. Mandatory PAR is not. So the administrator can now have a two-way conversation with the consulting teacher. Hey, this is what it says in the plan. I'm not seeing evidence of that. Can you please work on that? Yes. And then the follow-up can be, what steps did you take to help this teacher with this plan? Not how is the teacher doing with this area, but asking you, what steps did you take to help with this? And okay. And then the consulting teacher has to write two reports, one towards the end of the first semester and another towards the end of March, in which we gather evidence, the PAR panel and I, to decide if this person should stay in PAR or move out of PAR. And we use your report, we talk to the administrator, we use our own eyeballs as we've done our observations, the conversations and monitoring that we've done, and make a determination as to whether that teacher stays or moves out of PAR. The stipend for that is $4,000 a year. Okay, so significantly better because we recognize that there is a lot of work. Some of